Hey everybody, welcome back. It is I, Dr. Bosky, and I thought I'd do a little unpack on how to get a horizontal shmup to give you the banking animation. So how about I just jump into this real quick? So you'll notice here when I press forward that Dr. Bosky's arms, they go into a forward position, and when I push backwards, they go into a backwards position. And if I use an analog stick, you can see it happen slower. So here's a very light and then slow, or it can be fast, but you can see the different frames that we have from basically having a banking animation. So I was answering the question. I was like, oh, it's a little bit tricky on how you have to get it into the engine. It's not super difficult, but again, when you're new, everything can be a lot more difficult. So how about I hop into this and show you what's what. So first and foremost, let's hop over to the Shmup Creator documentation. And under Assets and Art Creation, you will find animating sprites. And then there's some stuff in here about animating sprites. But more particularly, we have how to set a bank animation for the player. And for the most part, in this example, the banking animation has to be 5 cells. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the neutral one. So this is when no input is being given. That is basically the banking animation so that it won't go into animation. And then the moment you press left on the stick or the D-pad or right, then it will then it'll render each one of these frames, and you have some controls, for instance, under that. So one of the things you have is you need to set the player animation, so the columns and the rows. So in this particular case, and then the animation speed. This is from the moment you do input, how fast it's going to animate through each of the frames. So and then over here in the player settings tab, you'll have to set it to bank. And I think that is it. Yeah, cool. So now that you've got a sense for what that is and what the art looks like, for us, here's our player sprite. And as you can see here, 5 frames. So it's set up this way. And because we're a horizontal shmup, everything is, of course, from left to right in terms of being horizontal. So you'll want to keep that in mind. And then what you do is you come into here. So we've set up our player, and then as you would expect, here's the animation. So I set the columns are 5, the rows are 1, and the speed in this case is just 1.0 in terms of the animation speed. So I don't think that actually matters. And then a couple other things here. So there's that, and then let's see. So we did that, and then on the settings for the player, we have enabled under the move section banking, and then this is the speed at which banking occurs. So, and I think that is and then the other though. So the trick is so the huge trick is that banking was created with a top-down, a vertical shmup in mind, right? So you have to then get the engine to think about your player orientation differently, right? So here in your project, you will see here that you have under the game editor and under game settings, you have a checkbox that's called horizontal, if you haven't found this yet, or vertical. And then that is, so horizontal shmup, you want it to be horizontal. And then over here, you want to then change your player orientation. So this is this one here, and you want to set it to up. So here you can see there is to the right, there is down, and then you can go also to the left. So up is the main thing. And then the other thing, unfortunately, there's not a good solve for this. So, but once you've set it up this way, when you go in to do things like weapon preview, so unfortunately, it's a horizontal shmup, but because the player is now set, hence the trick, to think that it's facing upwards, then what will happen is that in weapons editor preview, you won't be able to see like your weapons really getting full preview because again, the engine thinks it's in a different orientation. So just a limitation, but the good news is you can do it. And then if you want, is a little bit of a bonus point here. I can unpack a little bit more that we've done here. So in our Dr. Bosky player, so we have effects particles that we have set. So one of those, so just to unpack that a little bit. So here he is with just his different frames. And what we wound up doing is, you can see here that we have an effects particle that I've set to 999 seconds. And this just loops through basically we really want to have the billowing cloak, right? But the billowing cloak, in our particular case, you know, how do I say this? So in our particular case, we wanted to still animate without being tied to the main frames of animation that Dr. Bosky is going through. So a good example here. And this, just to put it in perspective, so we got this guy here. Is it here? Or is it here? So there's that. What's this one? Yeah, okay. So we have the auto weapon start. We have the cloak front. Oh, yeah. So we have the cloak front and we have the cloak backwards. So you'll notice. Oh, actually, I think this goes like this. Let me go back over here. Nope. I have to have the triggers wake up. So here, you'll also notice. So when I press forwards, we have another particle. It's a very, very short particle. This gives us a little bit more. We're faking fabric here, right? So we always keep the neutral version there, but then we have an additional cloak particle that appears on the front. And so the moment I tap, so you can see it appears. If I continue to tap, you can actually see that, but it will stay active while it continues to input. Same thing for the back cloak, or the back cloak. So, and then you can see the back cloak is here as well. So when I put all these things together, it gives us kind of the illusion that we came to in order to create kind of cloth that sort of felt like it was dynamically moving with the character. And it was a little bit more dynamic based on player input. So, so here, now that you've seen it, it's hard to not unsee it, right? So, and actually, I think I have a slight issue with my back cloak there that I need to clean up. But there you go. And the way that we set that up is, and I won't go too deep into this because it's more cosmetic. But basically, by leveraging the player button controller, so basically have when so it stays always activated across the level. So once the trigger wakes up, then it can grab input even if these are now outside of the camera. And then the mode we went for is hold. So there's press, there's release, and there's hold. So you have different options there. And then what we did here is, so at the very beginning of the level, we have a countdown timer. And the countdown timer then does the countdown. And then it enables the ability to read the inputs, because we want to have a small period of time where the player can interact with the player, as in the player can't interact with the character, I guess that's probably a better way to say it. And then what we do is we read, we basically read the right and the left button entries. And then there's a few other things that we do here. But the key point here is that we're reading the inputs from the player controller, and we're continuing then to spawn these particles that I pointed out here for the front and back. So just to give you a little like how we sort of constructed it. There's probably a few other ways we go about it, doing this, but that was kind of the way that we landed on and we prepared our art for. So I hope that is super helpful. I'll put this video up. Thank you very much for the question, and we'll see you all next time.